So it is football season, and every year since I was in high school, I've participated in the annual tradition known as fantasy football. So, so any fantasy football players out there? I know some of you I'm in a league with.
What is fantasy football?
Sorry, I don't have enough time. Okay, so I'm going to assume you know what fantasy football is for this. If not, just bear with me for a second. So when I was in high school, when I was like about a freshman, I think in high school, I started playing fantasy football. And back then, the very first time I played fantasy football, this is going to sound ridiculous if you play fantasy football, but back then, first year I ever played, we didn't have a website that we used. Now, I think they existed, but we did everything by pen and paper. And we grabbed the the newspaper. The internet existed. I just want you to know that. But it wasn't as good as it is today. And I think I still had dial-up at my house. But we had the newspaper, and we would look at the box score and be like, all right, this player got me this many points, and we'd write it out. And we'd all write out our scores and the opponent, and then we'd give it to the commissioner, and then he would verify, and then it's oh yes, you have won. Let me chisel it into a tablet. So that wasn't really how it went. But it was kind of like that, where it was ridiculous. That was my first year. The next year, we were all wait, let's go to Yahoo. Right? So we went to Yahoo. ESPN, I don't believe, had fantasy football yet. They might have. But we went to Yahoo and that kind of thing. And I was like, I'll be the commissioner. So I was the commissioner of my fantasy football league. And in that year, it was me and my friend Mel. And Mel, if you're watching, I'd be surprised if you're watching. But if Mel hears about this, he probably wouldn't be surprised. But me and him ended up in the championship game that year. And I need to confess something to you. I need to get this off my chest, okay? I cheated. Okay? I know. Listen, let me tell you this. As the commissioner, I had power, right? And here's so we were in the championship game, and I had my lineup, and one of my players did poorly, and then a person on my bench did much better than him. And as the commissioner, you can change the lineups after the fact. So I thought, I can't lose. I can't lose. I've got to win. And so I changed out one of my guys after it was all, after the game was done and everything, and to where I won. And then I deleted where it has a record of it, and I'm no. And I had that. He's no, I saw your lineup. He wasn't in your lineup. The whole game. And then now he is. What, you cheated? And I'm no, I totally did. I totally cheated. And then it's listen, I just need to let you know, it was bad. And it's something that this is almost therapeutic. I'm getting it off my chest here. All right. But I don't think he was surprised. I think he knew I cheated. But it was this abuse of power, and it's this false victory, right? It didn't even really mean anything. But it was this thing where I used my power to my advantage to cheat and to gain something, and it was a total collapse of integrity, and it was for nothing. There was no money on the line. It was really just for fun. And it was kind of silly. But today we're talking about this idea of power and how power is all around us, right? And so when we talk about power and authority, we're talking about, hey, if you are in a position of power, whether that's a parent or a teacher or a coach or a politician or a boss or anything like that, right? These people hold authority and power over us. And you as teenagers often feel maybe you don't have very much power, you don't have very much authority. I know especially for my junior hires, you are still in that stage where it's you don't have any kind of power or authority over anything. High schoolers, you're really starting to gain control of that. You're starting to get some of that in your own life. But we're talking about that, and the thing is power is complicated, right? Power is not something that's easy. It's and we got a slide up there. Power is complicated. So it creates weird, interesting dynamics, but that doesn't mean that power in and of itself or authority is bad, right? Because sometimes it can be used for good. to do good things, and sometimes it can be used to do bad things, like cheat at fantasy football or much worse things, right? Right? Because that's not like the worst thing ever. But again, like what happens to that, like my league, is they're like, no, well, you know, like this year didn't mean anything because you cheated, right? And so this is what we're talking about. We're talking about power. We're talking about authority. And how power is complicated. And what I want us to see is that power and authority goes back to the very beginning. This is not a new, like the idea of power and authority is not a new concept. It's actually existed for all time, right? It's existed forever and ever, right? And again, power and authority, not inherently bad things. It's what we do with that power and authority. What I want you to do is, if you have a Bible, you have a phone, whatever you do, you can flip to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. It's also up on the screen, and you can follow along. So Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Genesis also means like origin or beginning, right? And so this is the first chapter of the first book, and it's talking about how God created everything. And the author of Genesis does it in this poetic way, explaining God created, like first there was light, and then there were planets, and there were animals and stars and all these things, and there's order to creation. But then there's a special significance, right? We get to humans, and we see that humans are God's greatest creation. We see that God says everything that he created was good, but humans were very good. And this is Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, when he talks about that when God made humans. It says this: "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, and over the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So in the very beginning of time, God made humans in his image. So God made us in his image, which means that we are image bearers of God, which means we actually hold in us some of the characteristics of God. Now, does that mean that God looks like us? Probably not. But he put in us some of the characters and qualities that he has, and he made us capable of those things. And one of those things that he gave to us is power and authority. And he actually said, I'm giving you as humans authority over all of creation. Everything there is, I will let you have authority over it, right? So, you'll rule over it. And so we see that from the beginning of time, this idea of power and authority exists at the very beginning, before anything else. And so this is kind of what I'm talking. This is nothing new. This is what God intended. But really, what we see is that power in the hands of people who are sinful can be very evil. We can see that we as humans who are flawed, right, and not one of us is perfect. All of us suffer from sin, and all of us are capable of evil. And given the right circumstances, we might decide, hey, it's worth it to take advantage of my power. So in the game we played earlier, right, we said it's clear. Everyone write down to 1, everybody plays boxes. And I even gave you a cushion. I said, hey, 37 extra games. So even if a few people wrote down 2, everyone would still get to play boxes. Gave you a little cushion. And then here's what happened. About half the room said, I'm going to take that extra game. Or I'm going to take those extra few games. And I'm going to use my power, and I'm going to abuse it so that I get more games than other people. And what happened at the end is nobody got to play, right? And so we took our power, we abused it, and because of that, everyone suffered, right? And so when we were making this game, there were a couple of students who goes, well, what about those people who write one? They should be rewarded for writing one. They did the right thing. And I said, but that's not how the game works. That's not how life works, because sometimes you can do the right thing, but other people's bad decisions and abuse of power affects you negatively still. So we want to do a game that gives students, this is crazy, I said this, we want to make a game that gives you as students an opportunity to abuse power. Now it's a small thing, but you did it, right? And I get it. You're like, oh, is it like I didn't have a game of boxes anyway, so I wasn't really risking anything. And I get that. But here's the deal. In this, we see that even though power was a part of creation, it was part of the deal of the creation, humans haven't always used it well. Right? Even though God said this is what power is for, and I'm giving you this power over and over again, all of history is example of humans not using their power well. Now, to be fair, people have also used their power for good, right? People have used their power to do great things, to liberate people, to fight against people who are oppressing others, to free people from slavery, right? All these, like we see these instances where, hey, people use their power to do great things, but people also use their power to do evil things. So, we haven't always used this power well. So this is where we are tonight. In the series, The Upside Down Kingdom, we're talking about how Jesus turns the idea of power upside down. This is our bottom line for tonight. Jesus turns the idea of power upside down. Because we look at power and we go, what can I gain from this? How can I use this power to my advantage? Right? Give me that power so I can use it to benefit me. Now you may be sitting there, you're going, yeah, I really wish I had more power over my life. I wish, like, one day I want to be in the position where I make the decisions. I want to be at the point where I decide who wins and who loses. I want to be in the point where I say, hey, these people, like, I get what I need, and I've been hurt before, so I'm gonna finally use that power to my advantage. That's like a real thing, right? If you felt that, I get that, because you're like, you may feel powerless right now as a junior higher, as a high school. You're like, I don't have any power, but one day I'm gonna get me some power. I'm gonna get me some authority, and I'm gonna flex it, right? I'm gonna use that to my benefit. But here's what Jesus did. He turned that idea of I'm going to get the power and I'm going to use it for my benefit. He turned it on his head by using that power to benefit others. Here's another scripture. If you have your Bible, flip to Matthew 28:18. Now Matthew is one of the Gospels written about the life of Christ. 28, this is the end. This is like the last few verses of the Gospel of Matthew. So Jesus was crucified unjustly, died, and rose from the dead, right? People don't do that, right? He rose from the dead, and his followers and other people saw him alive, and they met some. He told some disciples, hey, go meet me at this place. Again, like, you see me, you know I'm alive. Hey, go to this place, I'll meet you there, and I'll tell you a few more things. And so here's what he says. This is like he's resurrected, and here's the words that he chooses. And he's just about to give them the Great Commission. This is how he starts it off. If you've ever heard the Great Commission, he says this. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Now, that's an interesting claim, because you or I could say that, and it doesn't really mean anything, right? All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me, Marshall Simpson, right? No, that doesn't mean much. All authority has been given to Noah, right? Nope. No, that's not like, but why? Why Jesus? Why can Jesus make this claim? Jesus can make this claim because he rose from the dead, right? Like, he said he was going to die, and he said he was going to raise from the dead. He says, I am the Son of God. He says, I and the Father are one. Jesus is God. And he's saying, listen, All authority in heaven and earth belongs to me. It was given to me because I am God. And let me tell you. And what does he do? He says, go and make disciples of all nations. He says, go out and tell people about me and have them live their life like me. So Jesus, self-proclaimed and rightfully so, has all authority. Right? And so when we're talking about power, we're talking about authority. Jesus is the expert on power and authority because he has it all. And so Jesus is saying, listen, go and do this thing. Now here's the thing. How did Jesus live his life? How did Jesus live his life? He did not live his life as someone who abused power, right? In fact, he never uses his power to make people feel small, or he never used it to hurt them, and he never used it to oppress people. Jesus, over and over again, uses his power to lift people up, to show love to the unlovable, and to bring people into the fold who nobody else wanted. Over and over again, he had battles with who? Other authority. People who were using their authority for evil, corrupt things. That's who he had issue with. He used his power to call out people who were abusing power and to lift up people who were being abused by power. So Jesus, he never used his power. Again, he has all of it, but he never used it to hurt people, to attack people, to make them feel small, or to oppress people. He used his power to lift people up. And the ultimate example is when he goes to the cross and is crucified. Because he could have shut that whole thing down. Right? He's going and he's getting ready to get like beat and whipped and crucified and all that. And he could have just been like, bam, I'm God. And they would just like, they would have been like, oh, my bad. Like, and flex his God muscles. I don't know what that looks like, but he could have done that. But he didn't. He said, no, I'm going to use my power to not fight back. I'm going to use my power to sacrifice myself to ultimately benefit everyone else. So he used his power for all of our benefit. Because ultimately, it was through his death and resurrection that he offered salvation to all of us. So, today, when we talk about power, and we start this series, we've got 2 more weeks of this series about the upside down kingdom and how Jesus turned power upside down, how he changed the idea of power. And what I want us to do to start off this series, I want you to rethink the way that you think about power and authority. I want you to rethink about the way that you think about power and authority. If you think about power and authority as like, how much of it can I gain for my own benefit? How much of it can I gain to get ahead? I want you to rethink. I want you to rethink. The first thing is this, right? First thing you do to rethink about power and authority is this. Think about Jesus. Think about Jesus. That's going to be a slide up there in a second. But the first thing is this. Think about Jesus. Think about what Jesus did. Think about how Jesus lived his life. Right? If you're like, hey, I don't really know much about how Jesus lived his life, go read a gospel. Right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, pick any of them. Seriously, this is like, you should go read one of these gospels. If you go, I don't really know how Jesus lived, go read one and see how Jesus treated other people. Think about what Jesus did. That's the first thing you can do to start rethinking, is to think about Jesus and how he lived. And then here's the second thing. Rethink how you use the power you have. Right? You may have limited power. Maybe, here's the deal. You may be like, I don't know, captain of your sports team, first chair in band. Maybe you're like the president of student council, or maybe you're like vice president of the junior historians or something like that. Hey, thanks, yeah. but maybe you're one of those things, right? And you have a little bit of power, right? But rethink how you use that power that you have. Because one day, chances are, you might have more power. Like when you're older, you have more responsibility. Maybe you have a family one day, and that family, if you're a parent, you have power over your children. How do you use that power? Because here's the deal. Let me just be honest with you, right? Because right now, You probably think, oh, I have that one teacher, and I really don't like them. I really don't like how they use that power. Okay? But let me just speak to you right now. They may be using their power in a way that you don't like, but that doesn't mean that power, they're exercising that power in a bad way. Because sometimes we have to do things that we don't like, but that doesn't mean it's bad for us. And maybe in 10 years you'll realize, you go, oh, I know why they did that. And maybe when you have kids one day, when I have kids one day, when me and Amy have kids, we're going to use our power to help raise our children. We don't have children on the way, okay? I just want everyone to be clear. All right, sorry, that was this is not an announcement, okay? All right, sorry, Amy is, I love you. Okay, so, yeah, we're going to move on. So rethink how you use the power that you have. So you can use your power for good. You can use it for bad, but rethink about how you want to use that power. How can you use it the way that Jesus used that power? Third thing is this. Rethink about the authority figures in your life, like I was talking about. You might have authority figures who you go, listen, I don't like them. And maybe you just don't like them because they expect better from you. And that's okay, because sometimes we need discipline, do we not? Sometimes we need to be disciplined for the things that we are not doing right or the things that we're doing wrong. But sometimes you do have authority figures that do mistreat you. And that's not right either. But I want you to think, the people in your life who have power and authority over you, right? I hope and I pray that they are doing the best they can. They are doing good with their power. I pray that I do good with my power as a youth minister, that I don't use it for evil or anything like that, but that I want to do it for good, for Jesus' glory. But think about the authority over you. And don't think, hey, they said do something I don't like, so they must be doing the wrong thing. That's not always true. Sometimes we just don't like what we're being told because it's not easy for us. But sometimes power is misused against us. So here's the thing I don't want us to see, right? Anyone who uses their power in ways that are harmful to you, someone else, or themselves is not using their authority in the way that aligns with Jesus' example. If someone is doing harm to you, here's what I'm not saying. That if someone is doing something that's bad to you, I'm not saying, hey, just go with it. What I'm saying is, because people do this, right? People misuse power. But if they're doing harm to you, someone else, themselves, whatever, that's not right. And that's what we're talking about. We're saying that is not what Jesus would do. If how someone's using their power would not line up with Jesus, because Jesus, he did have words of correction for people, right? Religious leaders, he did say, hey, y'all need to get it together. What you're doing is wrong. They didn't like it, but Jesus was right. But if people use their power to harm someone, that's a different situation. So we need to rethink the way that we think about power and authority. We need to rethink that. And that's where we're starting tonight. That's where we're starting with this series. And for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about this. But as we kind of close up tonight and we move on and we wrap up and we don't play boxes, I'm sorry. All right? And we go home tonight, I have this question I want you to think about. And that's this right here. Here's this question. Let's pop that up on the screen so everybody can see this. When you think about power, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Spider-Man? Okay, think about it in your head. You don't have to say it out loud, but I appreciate it. Okay? When you think about power, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Think about that, right? Because maybe that helps you see, hey, what do I think power is? If you think something like, oh man, power means I get whatever I want, right? Power means I'm strong, right? Right? But think about that. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about power? And then think about this week, and think about how you can start rethinking, because maybe you think one thing about power, but think, does that line up with Jesus? Does the first thing you think about line up with Jesus? Now, if you're going to fall retreat this weekend, yeah, what up? There we go. Unfortunately, you might miss, you'll probably miss your small group, right, in here. But But if you're not going to Fall Retreat, you can be here for small group on Sunday morning. Yeah, there we go. All right, but let me wrap it up by saying this. Jesus came to change the way that we think about power. And he wants you to start rethinking about what you think about power and how you can use the power that you eventually have or the power you have right now to do good. Let's pray.